Bill's Mopar channel, Knowledge Nugget. Today we're talking about your engine oil filter relocation options. There are two ways you can do this. You can either use no oil filter relocation, and that's a oil filter that threads vertically to a spot on the front of the engine block. The other option is you have the engine oil filter relocation bracket. It's a piece of cast aluminum that puts the oil filter on a 45-degree angle. Instead of being perfectly vertical, it sits more like this. One of the added benefits to it is there's a little trough built in that the oil can then run off of, and it does make the oil filter changes a little bit less messy. So a lot of guys that are doing Gen 3 swaps, they're looking at like ABE bodies, maybe FJM, whatever you're doing. The cross member doesn't necessarily clear this well or make this easily accessible. So most guys are using that 45-degree engine oil filter relocation bracket. Now that thing runs somewhere between $100, $200. There's a Mopar part number. I'll display it here for you. But you don't have to do that. You can go to a junkyard. My 2003 Ram 2500 donor came with this piece. This is to clear the solid front axle and all of the steering linkage crap in the front. So you can find these at the junkyard. In my case, that relocation actually caused the oil filter to interfere with my lower rad hose. So I had to eliminate it, and I learned some things in the process. So another important thing that you want to know when you're going into this is there are two families of oil filters. From 2009 and later, that they did change this to a metric style thread from the SAE type. The SAE type was great because I was actually planning on using an old 5259 Magnum oil filter. But after going through this process, I'm going to describe to you, that was no longer an option. Doesn't really matter. They're still cheap, and you can still buy them. And there are, we're talking about good 15 years worth of Hemis that use the metric style. So at some point, this filter will probably become more accessible or even more cost effective. So that's something to consider. Why is this important? Well, regardless of whether you have a 2009 or later or the 2003 through 2008 Hemi, the block did not change. That is an SAE thread no matter what. What I first attempted to do in my journey to eliminate this bracket was I checked out a 2005 motor, and I was looking for that piece that I need. So essentially there's just a threaded female hole in your Gen 3 Hemi block, and there is a dual male threaded fitting that you then can actually thread your oil filter onto. The problem with the older ones, and maybe there's a technique to this I'm just not aware of, I could not remove this. What I discovered looking at a 2009 truck was that the metric style one actually has a 12 millimeter hex fitting inside that dual male fitting that you can use a hex key on to remove it. So I ended up converting simply because I had no other means in the U-Pull junkyard of getting that fitting out. So I converted because it was that much easier just to get that part out. Unfortunately, I had to go home to get that piece, so that's why I'm telling you, bring that hex key with you, or just bring the whole damn set if you don't believe me, and be prepared for it. What I don't really know is after 2009 if that 45-degree relocation kit uses the newer filter. You could probably look this up pretty easily, but just consider something like that. I am going to show you how I removed this relocation bracket. Here is the 45-degree oil filter bracket, and here is my lower rad hose. It was just not enough space to squeeze this in here, and I really don't need it. If you're doing a Hemi swap on a Dakota, here it is before your own eyes. You do not need this 45 bracket. However, for those of you that do, look for a heavy-duty pickup. I'm assuming anything with a solid front axle needed this kit. It's just these 3 bolts to remove it. 8mm bolts. Pop those out. I've already done this. I just got 1 bolt holding it in, but I gotta take it out anyway. Underneath it, just have this rubber seal. What I need to do now is take the fitting that I pulled from the junkyard Hemi and thread it right into here with my hex key. And then it looks like the oil filter gasket will just seal up against this machine surface here. So there you have it. There's a few different ways that you can go about this, whether you're looking at a newer or older block. If, let's say, you have a 2009 and you need this bracket and you're like, hey, I want to use the old SAE oil filters, go to the junkyard, find your 2003 through 2008 Ram 2500, and that'll have the piece that you're looking for. So good luck on your Hemi swaps, and I hope you found this information useful.